One of the things about the motorcycle day at Brooklands is that we drag out of the woodwork a lot of small clubs, and usually with some particular bent or theme or whatever. And here today we've got the Roaring Twenties. Well, this gentleman here is clearly not from the Roaring Twenties, but he's inherited something from his childhood or his motorcycling or whatever. So you are?
My name's Graham Gasson.
So why the Roaring Twenties?
It's just the era that we really like. It was the golden era as far as I'm concerned, and the bikes sort of reflect that, or we can try to make sure the bikes reflect that.
And you are a small club or a large club?
A very small club. We have about 10 members, and we're very exclusive, shall we say. 10's enough.
So I couldn't join then?
We'd have to try the committee and see if you could join us.
Okay, and you've got some very interesting bikes here, actually, and I'm immediately attracted to what is a similar bike. In fact, I don't know whether it is a Meaton Francis Barnett, which we have in the museum, which holds a number of world records that were set here. And I mean, one of the records with the bike is the 5 hours 50 mile an hour record. And it's equipped with saddle tanks and whatever. I mean, how anybody could ride one of these things around Brooklands for 5 hours, that is something. So tell us about this one.
This one was, the engine was originally from, we believe, a Tommy Meaton bike, but it got separated from the chassis. So a few years ago, the idea was to put the engine back into a bike, and we managed to locate a frame from a very helpful guy, Arthur Walls, from the Francis Barnett Club, who had the frame, and basically all the bits that were missing, like the headstock, I fabricated to get the bike up and running again. But it is a Brooklands Villiers TT engine, so it's the same sort of engine that was raced here back in period. And so we were quite successful in actually getting this back up and running, and we're quite pleased with the result. Tommy Meaton had a sprint bike as well, and this is as close a replica as we could make of that bike. So, but yeah, it's a nice piece of kit.
That is incredible, because sadly, once you got to the 60s, anything that was two-stroke, when everybody was living on these wonderful Manx Nortons and four-strokes and all this sort of thing, was thrown away. And what people didn't realise is that the two-stroke was actually a much better engine, because it produced a lot more power. And I think Meaton was really a pioneer in making it possible for a two-stroke to even be registered. I mean, obviously Scott was as well, and the same thing, etc. So we've got here a very nice looking Zenith, which somebody's obviously spent quite a bit of time on.
This one was rebuilt by my father back in the 80s. The guy that raced it, Freddie Miller, he ran Miller's Motors of Mitcham in Surrey, and he raced this in period from 1926 to 1928, both solo and sidecar. It's got the 350 engine in it at the moment, which there was several. He swapped them around, and we've also got the 250 TT Brooklands Blackburn engine, which he used to race solo. And bizarrely, in 26, the 250 was lapping at 83.7, and the 350, because it was a more standard engine, was lapping at only 83, which sort of says something for Blackburn engines and for the guy himself at the time. But he was very successful. He mixed it with some of the big names like Wal Handley and Wooly Waters and people like that back in the day. So it's another nice bit of kit from period. I mean, it's even got the genuine Brooklands can and things like that on it still. And we've got the 3 petrol tanks. We've got the sprint tank, this standard one, and we've got the long range tank, which is much deeper.
One of the interesting things about the evolution at Brooklands was that when they first started out, they had no idea of how to run a motor race, because it had never been done before, and they modelled everything on horse racing, and weight was a big issue, with horses and what you put on it. But over time, I think they were very clever in the fact that handicapping became a big issue. and it was a way in which you could put any bike against another bike by simply handicapping the quick bikes and letting the slow bikes go a bit shorter distance effectively. And so that and people exploited that. So a good 350 was often better than a 500, and that's a good example of that. So we've got another two-stroke here.
Right, this is an SOS from, I think it's 27. This one. This is not my one.
SOS stands for?
So obviously superior. Apparently, amongst other things.
I thought it was Save Our Souls.
But again, it was another of its time. It's the first welded frame of its period. So there's no lugs, it's not brazed, it's all welded construction. And cleverly on this one, the engine and gearbox are mounted on a subframe. So you pull out a few long bolts and you can take the whole unit out as an assembly.
It's funny, a lot of people have copied that, haven't they?
They have. History repeats itself, yes. But again, it's another Villiers Brooklands 172cc engine, the same as the Francis Barnett. So it's the same heritage.
I'm sure that many people watching this will not realise what Villiers as a company did. And we talk about Honda and people like that, but Villiers was the, if you like, the Honda of the British Empire, if I can put it that way.
Yes, I mean, they're very clever. It doesn't have crankshaft seals. It relies on the oil in the bearings to make the crankcase pressure. And it's got an auto-lube system, which is way ahead of its time. And the engine inside, it's like a Swiss watch. It's got padded flywheels, it's all polished, but there's hardly any bits in there, and it still performs brilliantly.
One of the things, having been at Brooklands for the last 20 years, there's very few things that you find in the modern world that wasn't made or tried or experimented with at Brooklands. I think the only real difference is materials, which is a massive move forward after the war. The war helped that situation. So moving on, we've got one of these horrible four-strokes. Now we've been talking about lovely two-strokes. So this is again another interesting bike.
Yeah, this one is Jeff's bike. It's a post-war Garden Gate Manx Norton. I believe with history it has been raced. I don't know much about this one, I'm afraid. But
where was the Garden Gate thing come from?
I think it was the frame construction, because obviously then the featherbed came in, which was a game changer completely. Yeah. But this was the best at the time until that development came through.
In fact, I think Jeff Duke won the senior TT on one of these with plunger suspension in 49 or something around about that time. I can't remember all that, but and there's another evolution of Norton. We're going the wrong way around now, aren't we? We're going backwards.
Yes,
now.
Yeah. I believe this is a 25 Model 18, so it's a 500cc Norton. Very successful bikes around Brooklands. This one has some Brooklands history. Run by a privateer back in the day. Again, of their period, Nortons were doing OHV engines pretty much before a lot of other people were moving on from side valves. So it's a nice bit of kit, and it's all original.
Yeah, it's got that patina that it's used. It's not polished, and that's lovely. Well, thanks very much for your time. No thanks problem. Even more for actually coming to Brooklands and supporting us. And hopefully we'd like to see you next year. And if I put an application in, do you think the committee might think about me?
Well, we'll check. We don't blackball many people.
Thanks very much.
Okay, John.